Hello, everyone. My name is McDonald, and I'm here to give a quick PowerPoint on the exploration of eye contact and how that can affect our nonverbal communications, where some of my personal anxiety with eye contact stems from, and some better practices and strategies for how to improve this specific skill set in nonverbal communications. And then we'll end with a little engaging activity. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. We'll go to the importance of eye contact. Let's lay that base out. Eye behaviors convey meaning in interpersonal settings. Engaging in eye contact with someone, for instance, might communicate interest, attraction, or anger, whereas failing to make eye contact may denote submissiveness, respect, or shame. So we can see right off the bat that eye contact is going to play a major role in many situations of communication, and especially with people that we're just meeting or in a professional setting, because if this communication style has the ability to communicate interest or attraction, those are very different than anger or submissiveness or shame. It's a very wide spectrum. What you can say with your eyes. You've ever heard the saying of you have strong eye words. People can be very expressive with their eyes and say or tell a lot, or they can also hide a lot from you, as some studies have been showing. So, just it's very important to know that there is a lot of influence in communication based off their eyes. Here's just some quick norms of eye contact, some good guidelines. It's generally acceptable to hold eye contact for around 3 to 10 seconds, but really we think it's more around 4 to 5 seconds. Otherwise, you're going to appear aggressive or potentially romantic if you're really staring into someone's soul. Um, in fact, research demonstrates that holding eye contact for too long encourages the recipient to stare to resist persuasion. Um, so if you're giving someone too much eye contact, it can actually turn them off and start them to down a path where they're going to be defiant and or resistant against what you are trying to communicate to them. Research also shows that in a social conversation, people normally look at one another for around 30 to 60% of the time that they're interacting and communicating. For people in love, obviously this is going to rise all the way up to 75%, and potentially, sadly, for business, it's even more than love, which is somewhere around 90% of the time people in a business interaction are going to keep eye contact. Um, and a speaker always looks away more than a listener. It's even acceptable to close your eyes briefly, as this helps your brain to retrieve some information. So, those are just some of the norms, just some things that you should know going in to your communication with interacting with other people. What the norms are is always a good thing to know in any cultural setting. So then really the point of this PowerPoint in this project is to highlight something that I need to improve on. So for me, eye contact is, I think, without a doubt, where I struggle the most historically and to this day in nonverbal communications. I have always struggled with it. It makes me pretty uncomfortable, but I do respect and understand that it's important. So, areas to improve when listening to my students, when meeting someone new, when in a work meeting, when using Zoom, which is a new and kind of a tricky aspect of this, and also when performing poetry. I perform a lot of poetry in competitions, and having your poems memorized and connecting to your audience with your eyes is a very, very big, influential way to score more points and to come off as more authentic and genuine. And that's something that I have struggled with, and I think it's held me back. So it's something I'd really like to focus on. Just a little bit on where my problem comes from. I do have been diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, and that is really at the root of where the anxiety for me with eye contact comes. Um, Often people with this disorder describe looking someone in the eyes as anxiety provoking, uncomfortable. This is in part to our genetic wiring. Research has shown that people diagnosed with SAD have a pronounced fear of direct eye contact. If you have SAD, the part of your brain that warns you of danger can actually be triggered by eye contact. So it can really affect us in a lot of different ways. Some best practices and strategies for improvement. Yeah, after some research, I was able to get this nice little list. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through those. These all do, to me, seem like pretty valid options, and I look forward to giving these a chance in the next couple of weeks, making a mental note to try these while I'm meeting new people and see if it helps. So you can establish eye contact from the start. Make your eye contact before you start talking to someone. So just get it out of the way, establish that line of communication before you even start talking. Use the 50-70 rule. Maintain eye contact 50% of the time when speaking and 70% of the time when listening. Look for 4 to 5 seconds. We've touched on that earlier, so we'll skip that. Looking away slowly. When you look away, do it slowly, because if you start looking away too quickly, you're darting your eyes back and forth. This is going to come off as being really nervous, potentially shifty or untrustworthy as well, so we want to avoid that. Use the triangle technique. This is one I had never heard of. Rather than looking away or looking down, you can look at another spot on their face. Imagine an inverted triangle connecting their eyes and mouth. Every 5 seconds, rotate which point of the triangle you are looking at. That's kind of a self-diversion tactic, almost as if you're both the magician and the audience in this instance. You're going to trick yourself into becoming comfortable looking at someone's face. And sometimes you can look right around their eyes and they won't be able to tell if you're actually looking into their eyes or not. Making a gesture. Break your gaze to make a gesture or a nod. This appears more natural than looking away and doesn't tell people that you've become uncomfortable. Again, eye contact, a lot of the times, depending on the power dynamic, can insinuate levels of respect or that you're just either not listening or that you are listening very intently. So it's something that making a gesture can kind of help burden hold that burden. Instead of having it all on your eyes, you can start to use other nonverbal tactics to aid your communication process. And then, as I've said earlier, you can look near the eyes as well.
Is something wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Don't I have the right to be happy? To exist? I'm sorry I didn't 9/11 Pearl Harbor before breakfast, but I have a life too. I have dreams.
Take a moment and say 3 nice things to yourself. This is another kinesthetic reaction, and this is when they believe that you can prove that people will look down and to their right when they're having internal dialogues with themselves. So um, we can mark another point for that. And I'm just kind of interested, and when we get to have our conversation, I'd love to hear, out of 6 points, did anyone get any points? Was any of this correct? Was this model, did it hit home for you? Because if it does, it's something that you can really start to think about when you're interacting and communicating non-verbally with others in the future. Just really interested to see how that played out for everybody. So that's it for the engagement activity. Then we have our works cited right here, and then end with that's all, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for a good semester, and I hope everybody's doing well. Have a good night.